Welcome, day 2. Thank you for being here and listening to our story about the next phase in the project that we performed last year. The next phase, as last year we presented, Alberto and I presented the first phase, which had to do with connecting research infrastructure or equipment to research output. Now there's another part, which is something we are going to do, and it has to do with the enrollment of a new tool at TU Eindhoven. And I will go through this agenda. I will tell you something about the TU, University of Eindhoven, as a whole, just to make sure that I notice here that it's very important for us to have our research infrastructure managed and why it's so important for us. I tell you something about Clustermarket, then I leave it to Alberto for the technical story about what we did. And later on, I will tell you something about the lessons learned and the key takeaways. So why is it important to know how Eindhoven University of Technology looks like? There are some specific characteristics that are important to have a background of why it's important for us to have the research infrastructure in line. And that's especially our world-leading position in co-publishing with industry and our collaboration with high-tech industry. And we cooperate, especially regional, as we are fully embedded in the Brainport region. And on the website of Brainport region, it's mentioned where passion for technology in business, work and education is brought together in an inspiring environment. Themes that we are working on are mobility, energy, health and food. And as you see, there's a lot of money available within the Brainport region, and we work together with startups and spin-offs, but also with global companies that are really important for us, as ASML and Philips. Within our strategy for 2030, we have really mentioned research infrastructure and embedded it in this strategy. It's mentioned in there that we are willing to improve in cross-disciplinary research, and this means also within faculties, that we cooperate within faculties more and in a better way. The industrial partnership we would like to work more in. And it is mentioned in our strategy that we have a central storage available. And of course, the visibility of the equipment is key for this. And there's where Pure comes along. So how is research infrastructure managed at TUE at the moment? We have 12 state-of-the-art research labs and facilities. These labs have their own website on the TUE research website, but without the mentioning of equipment. In total, we have approximately 60 labs available, and all of them are managed by lab managers. In 2022, we had a soft launch of Clustermarket, which is an equipment scheduling and management system for research and development labs. And with this tooling, so we have Pure Clustermarket, we have in mind to get an integrated process available. So we set up labs and equipment and have the inventory in place and the availability for people to schedule and make reservations in a tool. For the lab managers, this is also the place to manage the equipment. We will make a differentiation in this tool, so we make sure that there is equipment that is there for profiling, but also equipment that shouldn't be on a website, because it's not needed. And With that equipment grouping, we will create a link and synchronization to Pure, where in Pure we get the possibility to have a link with research outputs and equipment. And with this information altogether, we can do analysis and make the option to get the impact available, which, for instance, also can help in our replacement strategy. So when new equipment is bought, it can be set up in the lab and the whole circle starts over again. So Clustermarket, I took some information from their websites. So you can read it all on their website as well. But for us, it was of great benefit that we have this centralized system now where all the equipment can be managed. And also we have the key contact per lab and equipment available in this booking system. But main here, as I highlighted it in orange, there is an API available. And here it's mentioned that the API is ready to connect to other lab software. But of course, we won't use other lab software, but we use Pure instead. And why we started with Clustermarket, the API was still under development, which has its benefits, it seems. So what we do, we have at the moment 47 laboratories with their equipment active in Clustermarket. And from this schedule, you can see that we have the schools, departments, and labs available in Pure, and the equipment will be synced from Clustermarket to Pure. And how this is technically done, I'll leave it up to Alberto.
Thank you, Petra. Good morning. So this is, as Petra said, season 2, if you want, of our saga about building an integrated system around equipment and facilities. So for those of you who have attended the talk yesterday with the University of Bath, with Dace, you may have seen some of these concepts already, but I think a good refresher is always welcome. So as I said, as we were saying yesterday, in order to link equipment and publications, you need to have equipment data. In this case, the innovation is that we are getting the equipment data directly from Clustermarket through an integration that I will describe in more detail later. And from there on, the process of incorporating the equipment information, linking it to our taxonomy, and then processing the full text to extract the links between the research outputs and the equipment is the same that we have described yesterday, with all the new additions that we also discussed. And then these links are surfaced through the reporting module for the purpose of impact assessment and reporting, and through the portal for showcasing. And for another interesting use case that we have discovered while we were working on this project that I will mention later, that still leverages the portal. So the new equipment monitoring service is made of two separate services. One is the equipment refinement service and the equipment data linking. So the equipment refinement service is the service that we do in order to identify an equipment entry in Pure and associate it with an equipment entry in our equipment taxonomy that we are building, that is used by the text mining pipeline, the equipment data linking module, to identify the equipment. It's essentially a knowledge base of equipment that contains all the different name variants of the vendors, the equipment types, the different model numbers. There's pretty much no standardization in the way the equipment is mentioned in scientific articles, because the mentions occur in the materials and methods sections of the articles. So the purpose of the mention in the mind of the author of the article is to describe the experiment from the point of view with an idea of reproducibility, if you want. I want to provide a detailed description of the experiment so that people who are reading the article understand what's going on. And as you may know, the materials and methods section is one of the first things that the researchers read when they look at an article. They check the abstract, material and methods, results, and if it's interesting, they will look into anything else. So we tap into that part specifically, and there's many ways in which the equipment is referenced. So we learn about that, and we accumulate this knowledge in our taxonomy. And in order to do that association, we use a team of people that have been trained to identify from the metadata that are available in Pure the entry in the equipment taxonomy. And once that is done, we do the linking by processing the full text and extracting the mentions. So specifically, this equipment refinement service starts with the equipment data, and it can be coming from Pure, but in many cases, it's just an Excel file. And what you see in the screenshot is actually our taxonomy. The code name is Orion. And you see it's well structured. You have all the different document types, the equipment types, and a number of attributes. So what the equipment refinement service team does is they try to identify from the metadata in Pure an entry in the taxonomy. This is generic. It's that specific brand and model of NMR spectrometer, for example. Once they have done this identification, they create an instance of that equipment in the taxonomy, and the instance contains all the information that is specific to that piece of equipment in that lab at TUE in this case. So we will include information about the facility. We will include information about identifiers, of course. We will include information about start and end dates. Every bit of information that allows us to know more about the equipment and enables the linking with the publications is stored as a specific information of that instance of the instrument at the institution. And then the other thing that they do is they process the outputs of the linking. So the linker generates a set of links that are where the algorithm has a confidence score that is above 90, which means we believe these are correct links. And there's also a list of links where the algorithm is not so sure. And when the algorithm is not so sure is often because there's new synonyms, new labels for a specific equipment that we weren't aware of, especially when we process the equipment and we add new equipment. And again, this is work in progress, so we're growing this taxonomy with every new institution we work with. And there's certain instruments that we have encountered always pretty much, like mass spectrometers, certain microscopes, etc. But there's also some quite fancy instruments that we haven't seen before. So we have ourselves to learn about those instruments. We have to add those instruments in our taxonomy. And of course, we don't know much about how they're being cited in the papers until we see those citations. So that's when the feedback loop becomes useful, because then we will start tracking some of the synonyms that we may have missed. We add them back to the taxonomy so that we can reprocess the full text and capture additional links, and also continue to learn as we go through each one of these processes of these exercises. The equipment data linking is exactly the same that we have described yesterday. So the innovation aspect of this is that we start from the full text. So we create a corpus of publications from Scopus, and then we go all the way back in the Scopus data supply chain to get access to the full text. And what do we do with that full text? We have an AI-powered pipeline that for every article splits the article into sentences. Then we have a language model that we have trained to recognize sentences that talk about equipment. So we classify sentences, and the positive sentences, the one that the algorithm classifies as sentences about equipment, are annotated with vendor data information, equipment types, and with model numbers, essentially, and facilities, any other bits of information that we can capture, and that is all available in our taxonomy. And then the combination of these labels, usually it's the vendor, the instrument type, and the model, plus maybe the facility information, is what identifies that specific instance of the equipment in the text, and that's what creates the link. And the output at the end of the process is a link between a Scopus record and an equipment entry in our taxonomy, specific instance. So that's how it works. And going to some of the results. So with the process of indexing the equipment data from Clustermarket, we have included 47 facilities, over 1,000 instruments, and it's not all the instruments that are available in Clustermarket, because we've filtered out benches, rooms, and other entries in the equipment booking system that are not instruments. We're getting all the metadata from Clustermarket, including the pictures and the IDs and everything else that you can store in Clustermarket, and that has a place in the equipment data model in Pure. The other thing that I wanted to mention, it's very small, so you probably don't see it, but this is the pointer, right? Yeah. Here, what we have added is a link to the equipment booking system. Because when we were talking with TUE about this, we discovered an interesting use case. The Pure portal could be used by potential users of the equipment to find the equipment, and both for researchers at TUE, but also external researchers. So with that link, you can just click and you will be taken straight to the equipment booking page for that piece of equipment. If you're a TUE researcher, then you already have an account in Clustermarket and you can just go ahead and book your time on the instrument. If you are an external user, there's a function in, there's a link in Clustermarket that will generate a request to get access to the lab, essentially. So that will be routed to the lab manager, and the lab manager will deal with that request, rather than having the email or the telephone number and then having to send emails to the lab manager. This is integrated in the system. This is a slide from last year, actually. So, but it's just a reminder of how much more powerful and rich an equipment page in the portal is when you add the publications, because you can see what actually was enabled by that instrument. You can see the fingerprint of the instrument being enriched by the publications. So it's way more interesting. And this is going to happen. We're going to redo this exercise once we have tuned out some of the last things that we're doing with the integration. I believe that's something that I haven't mentioned. Sorry, I moved ahead too fast. But the next steps are to manage the visibility of the equipment on the portal. And the way we want to do this is through an opt-in mechanism. Not all the equipment should end up in the portal. Some of that equipment, you want it in Pure for reporting purposes, but you don't want it in the portal. The way we want to do this is to create groups. This is a capability of the Clustermarket system where you can create virtual groups of instruments. We want to create a group that will control the visibility of the equipment. So if the lab manager adds that instrument to that specific group, then that will turn the visibility of the instrument to public. And so you'll see the instrument on the portal. Otherwise, it will remain backend. Likewise, we would like to manage the life cycle of the equipment. So the Pure data model has a commission and decommission date for the equipment, but that's pretty much it. What we want to do, and this is becoming more powerful now that with 528 we have the equipment API available. We want to control, for example, the visibility, potentially, but also the availability of the booking link. So if an instrument is decommissioned, maybe you still want it in the portal because it enabled great research, but of course you don't want to enable a booking. So we may just remove the link so that the instrument cannot be booked. So we're still working on that. We're working very closely with Clustermarket. As Petra said, they're also changing the API to add some of these additional data in their API. So we're really looking forward to building the whole thing together with them. And I leave the final takeaways to Petra.
Yes, so what have we learned from this project? Actually, as in loads of projects, we also see here that data quality is critical. For instance, providing of clear guidance for registering the equipment in Clustermarket is key, as we have, as we sync it, and it should be understandable a piece of equipment, and not in only in numbers, but also in the type, the type and number. We have different stakeholders, use cases and solutions brought together, which means that there's always, it's always very important to have a lot of good communication between stakeholders at the institution, as well as the software vendors. They worked closely together in this case, so that went fine. Well, and as Alberto already mentioned, there are still some things that need to be improved, and we need to have this things sorted out. It is a project which is innovative and with a lot of learnings. And well, to finish it off, it all takes time, and hopefully next year we have this all in production and visible on our website. Thank you very much. Do we still have time for questions? Ah.
Oh, sorry. I'll go back to you.
Question for Alberto. Is the taxonomy available somewhere online that we can look at it? Because I'm interested if it also caters for medical equipment.
It does cater for medical equipment because one of the pilots was with the University Medical Center at Groningen, so we added some of your equipment. To answer your first question, the code name for the taxonomy is Orion. That's my thing. We called it telescope, so Orion stands for Open Research Infrastructure Ontology. Now, that's at this moment it's a wish. My wish is that we can open it up when it's mature enough. I have to talk to our senior leadership to make sure they're on board, because of course when you open it, it also means that you put some resources to make sure that it's of good quality. But the plan is indeed to drive adoption of this taxonomy. We know that there's been a lot of efforts to standardize this. I'm involved also as an observer on the RDA working group on persistent identifiers for equipment, and they're also looking to have a taxonomy. They're facing all the same issues that we're facing. The fact, for example, that vendors change continuously because companies get acquired. So FEI was acquired by Thermo Fisher Scientific, and sometimes the instrument is referred to as FEI or sometimes it's Thermo Scientific. So it really depends. There's a lot of information that we are accumulating in this taxonomy. My plan, my hope is that at some point this will become part of a community effort. But it's my wish, and I'm speaking as a person at this point, but hopefully we'll make it happen.
Yeah, because indeed I want to take things further at UMCG as well, but I'm having a bit of a hard time convincing people the same way as it's done at Eindhoven, what this can bring, and showcasing the taxonomy and that it already caters for medical equipment, and then we can bring it further. That would be very nice to have. Yeah. So, thank you.
Happy to talk about it.
Hi, Chris, Lancaster University. I know you're currently looking at the full text in Scopus. Is there any plans for being able to access the files that we have in Pure, which have full text, particularly if we can get the author-accepted manuscript, so that we can try and link everything together before it's actually published or linked in?
I love the idea, and in principle the answer is yes, because our pipeline is already managing XML. With the big publishers, we don't get PDFs, thank God, we get XML data, but with a lot of the small publishers, we still get processing PDFs. So our pipeline is able to start from a PDF or a Word document, extract the full text, and do the processing. So in principle, yes, we can do that. If you grant us access to those publications through the API, it's definitely possible. There's another area that we are exploring, which is creating links even when there's no publication available. And the idea here is to create a two-way communication with the equipment booking system, so that we get the equipment data from the booking system, we send them the projects from Pure. When you book a time on an instrument, you're always mentioning what project you're booking it for. So if we can use the Pure projects and we can get the booking data from the booking system, then we have an association between the equipment and the project, then we can push into Pure. So even if you don't get any outputs, you can still say, oh, this project involved this equipment, so you can make your story about the impact, etc., also in absence of any publications. But that's maybe part of next year's presentation.
Okay, Tipo?
Yeah, but thank you for the nice presentation. A simple question about DOIs. Do you create DOIs for instruments so that it makes them unique, so that if it is, discovered elsewhere, it could point back to the...
It's
just-
it's a great question, and actually it's something I was recently in Australia for a business trip at the e-research conference, and we talked again about equipment. There's a whole initiative. Actually, the working group that I mentioned before has worked on a metadata schema for data sites. So the idea is indeed to mint persistent identifiers as DOIs for instruments. We can definitely do it. There's nothing that prevents us from minting a DOI once we import a piece of equipment from an equipment booking system. We've already worked with DataSite multiple times, so we can definitely do that and add the DOI to the taxonomy.
And especially if you have another university using an equipment from
They can cite
another,
it.
yes. So you can just...
That's definitely, if you look at what's going on in the community around equipment, all the efforts are trying to get things right from the beginning, just pretty much like ORCID. So let's get persistent identifiers for everything and do it. But before that happens, of course, time will pass, so we're also trying to do it the other way around.